The flashing lights from two squad cars lit up my entire street, neighbors crowding their porches like it was some kind of show. And right in the middle of it stood my HOA president, grinning like she'd already won. She had called 911 on my wife, claiming we were criminals pretending to be military. And for a split second I thought, what if they believed her? What if the life we'd built here collapsed before it even began? I never thought welcoming my wife home after 2 years apart would turn into a neighborhood battlefield. But that's exactly what happened. Morgan had just finished her service overseas, and I'd spent days making the house perfect, scrubbing every corner, hanging a welcome banner across the porch, even buying fresh flowers like a lovesick teenager. That day, when her olive green truck turned onto our street, I swear my heart almost burst. She stepped out in her boots, tall and confident, every move crisp like the officer she was. When she hugged me, I felt grounded again, like everything finally made sense. But then came the sound of a door slamming 3 houses down. Out stormed Victoria Mills, our HOA president, the kind of woman who lived for power, with a clipboard practically glued to her hand. She marched across the street in her bathrobe like she was leading troops into combat. Phone already snapping pictures of Morgan's truck. Her face was twisted with disgust, like the sight of us had ruined her day. "You can't park that military vehicle here. It violates Section 3B of community guidelines," she barked, her voice slicing through the air. I tried to explain calmly. "Ma'am, this is my wife Morgan. She just moved home from base housing." But Victoria cut me off, chin raised, eyes cold. "I don't care who she claims to be. There's no record of military personnel at this address. Possible stolen valor." I felt my blood boiling. But Morgan, God bless her, stood there silent, studying Victoria the way she might study a hostile contact. That calm, steady posture rattled Victoria more than any yelling could. Still, she wasn't done. She started typing furiously into the neighborhood chat. "Military invasion on our peaceful street." Within minutes, curtains were shifting, eyes were watching. I knew exactly what she was doing, shaping the story before we had a chance. That night I barely slept. And sure enough, at dawn I heard her outside, pacing on her porch, calling 911 loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. "Suspicious individuals, dangerous vehicle, possible fraud," she declared, like she was saving America from a terrorist cell. She didn't stop with the cops. She called the tax office, the fire department, even went door to door telling families my wife might be dangerous, whispering that military people often snap, watching her poison the well with that fake concern. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, true helplessness. When the sirens finally cut down our street, my stomach dropped. 2 squad cars pulled up, and by then, half the neighbors were gathered. Victoria was in her element, pointing dramatically toward our house. "Officers, thank God you're here. She claims to be military, but she has no proof. And he," she jabbed a finger at me, "is too scared to speak up." My hands shook. I kept thinking, if they doubt us, if they take her word over ours, Morgan's career could be over. Chief Reynolds, a weathered man with sharp eyes, asked politely for identification. Victoria smirked, her victory all but sealed in her mind. I fumbled for my wallet, but everyone was looking at Morgan. She moved slowly, deliberately, pulled out her ID, and the sunlight caught the eagle seal. Colonel Morgan Hayes, United States Army. The silence was surreal. Victoria's smirk froze, her eyes widening, color draining from her face like someone had unplugged her soul. The officers straightened, saluted crisp and clean, their voices suddenly respectful. "Ma'am?" Around us, whispers erupted. "She called the cops on a colonel? Has she lost her mind?" My knees almost gave out from the relief. For a moment, the neighborhood dictator looked like she'd been struck by lightning. I thought that would be the end, but I underestimated her ego. For 3 days, she vanished behind closed curtains, but when she reappeared, she came armed not with cops, but with paperwork. Violation notices plastered on our door, hedges too tall, trash bins out too early, porch light too bright, even a suspicious gathering because Morgan and I had pizza with a delivery guy. 10 fines in 2 days, nearly $900. At night, she blasted music at 11 p.m., cutting it off 1 minute before the noise ordinance. She walked her dog exclusively on our lawn, smirking as it squatted. That's when I cracked. One evening, holding another stack of citations, I muttered, "Maybe we should just pay. Keep our heads down. Maybe she'll stop if we show we can follow the rules." My voice was hollow even to me. The truth was, I felt beaten, like a prisoner in my own home. I hated myself for even saying it. Morgan turned to me with a look that pierced right through my fear. "You can choose fear if you want," she said softly. "But I spent 8 years facing enemies with real weapons. I'm not surrendering to a suburban bully with a clipboard." That's when everything changed. The next morning, she started her own operation, literally labeled a folder "Neighborhood Peace." She began documenting every move Victoria made. Photos of her car parked illegally, videos of her dumping trash at odd hours, recordings of her dog off-leash, screenshots of her spreading false reports. Watching her work with that military precision lit a fire in me. If Victoria wanted war, we were going to fight it on our terms. The HOA meeting was called a week later. At Victoria's request, she strutted in with a briefcase full of evidence, acting like the savior of the neighborhood. She told the board we were dangerous. We disrespected the community, and she demanded they terminate our residency. Some board members nodded along, and my stomach knotted. I knew how convincing she could be. But then Morgan stood up. No flashy props, just a plain folder. Her voice steady. She connected her laptop to the projector and said, "Let me show you some facts." What followed was like watching a house of cards collapse. She played footage of Victoria dumping trash into our bin at dawn. Gasps filled the room. She showed logs of false witness statements, all from Victoria's 2 close friends. None actual witnesses. Photos of Victoria's own overgrown garden, her car blocking sidewalks, her illegal yard decor. 47 pictures she'd secretly taken of us, mapped with timestamps. Neighbors started whispering, angry, betrayed, realizing they'd been spied on too. Victoria's face went red, then pale. She tried to shout us down, claiming we'd faked evidence, but her voice cracked. When she lunged for the projector, 2 board members held her back. I stepped forward, quietly saying, "I think everyone sees who's causing the disturbance now." The board left the room to deliberate, and those 10 minutes felt endless. When they returned, the verdict was crushing for her and liberating for us. Every violation against us dismissed. Victoria fined $500 for harassment and abuse of the system. A new policy put in place: no complaint would be processed without independent evidence. It was basically the Victoria rule. She stormed out, shouting about lawsuits and corruption, but no one followed her. No one clapped. No one comforted her for the first time. She stood alone, stripped of her authority. I watched from the doorway as she stumbled toward her house, muttering into her phone. Her shoulders slumped like the weight of the world had finally landed on her. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking at every creak. The next morning, I saw her curtains drawn tight, her windows dark. She was still there, but her presence felt smaller, diminished. The street felt lighter, like a storm had passed. And as I sat on my porch, sipping coffee in the quiet morning air, I thought about the irony of it all. The woman who had built her identity on control lost everything the second someone stood up to her with truth. The lesson? Bullies thrive on silence, but the moment you shine a light on them, their power crumbles.